Okay. Let's just see. Yeah. No, I think this was somewhere to put it. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. My name is Martin Griffiths. I'm the UN Envoy for Yemen. And I just wanted to have this opportunity to talk to you briefly this evening, because we're probably about halfway through the consultations that began here last Thursday. And I want to make a few points on the record and then take a few questions. First of all, thank you to the government of Sweden and the people of Sweden, whose welcome here has been efficient, effective, warm, very, very welcoming, very comprehensive. The location that we have up the hill here is it's tailor-made for the kind of work that we've been doing morning, evening, and afternoon these last days. So it's terrific. Thank you very much to the government of Sweden. That's very, very welcome. Thank you also to a number of other governments. I said this the other day. But it's very clear, and your presence is a testimony to this, is very clear to all of us, that the international attention on what's happening up that hill is very, very considerable, very focused, very important, very serious. And I can tell you from my experience with the parties and with our advisors, this is very welcome attention. Focuses all our minds. It makes us work hard. It makes us work on specifics. And it makes us realize that it's been 2.5 years too long since the people of Yemen had a chance to start the negotiation of a final solution to this conflict. As I was mentioning to you the other day, the backdrop to these consultations is the dire humanitarian situation in Yemen. Tomorrow, we will be providing, through the United Nations humanitarian agencies represented here, a briefing to the parties who will be sitting together for this briefing on the humanitarian situation, the challenges, the needs, the responses of the international community, agencies and NGOs and donors. But it's frightening, it's alarming. And one of the main reasons that we're here is to start the process to make that humanitarian program, to make it out of business. We've had many meetings over this last 4 or 5 days. We're very grateful to the leadership of both parties, to their willingness to work at the working level, in working groups on particular issues. And we got 7 or 8 issues, you know what they are. I'm not going to give you details of where we've got on them, but I will tell you roughly where we are in the process. And so there has been detailed work on detailed possible agreements. I hope, but this is hope, not optimism, right? It's still that, ambition, not optimism. I hope we will get agreements in the next couple of days on a whole range of issues. We're getting to that point where we understand, I think by tomorrow morning, we'll understand the views of both parties on specifics, and we try to close the distance so that we can ideally bring these negotiations forward to a public conclusion within the next few days. As you know, we're keen to make this not a one-off. It's going to be the first of many rounds of consultations. I'm hoping to speak to President Hadi, President of Yemen, whose leadership brought us here, in the next day or two to agree with him and also, of course, with the other side on where and when we might reconvene for talks on the political solution to the conflict in Yemen. I think the theme of this consultation has been humanitarian. I mentioned this off the record the other day. Both parties assure me and assure you, through you to the people of Yemen, that their intention here is to deliver on humanitarian needs of the Yemeni people in a range of different ways. Both parties say that. There's a unanimity on that as a priority. It's sometimes called confidence-building measures. Essentially, it's things that they can both do to help others. That means that we have been talking about the issue of opening Sana'a airport. that means. We're making progress on the release of prisoners. We've had a meeting between the two sides yesterday on that. There'll be an announcement to make on that in a couple of days, which I hope will be very, very considerable in terms of the numbers that we hope to get released within the few weeks. I believe we are close to getting an agreement on making sure that we can contribute to the economic management, the fiscal management, the monetary issues that have plagued Yemen. The devaluation of the currency in Yemen was a major contributor to the possibility of famine. You still with me? Yes. Thank you. And of course, we've also been talking about Hodeidah and also about Taiz. These are two major population zones in Yemen caught in war. I'm hopeful that we can reach agreements on the de-escalation to reduce the fighting in both places. I'm hoping that we can. We're not there yet. It's very, very difficult to convince parties who are fighting each other to put down their weapons and give their trust to the agreements that the others propose. The United Nations is there to help that happen and to witness and observe, chivvy and nudge. So I'm hopeful we can on those two. It's really, really important. If we are able to achieve progress on those two places and lift the threat of war to the people in those two places, I think we'll have done a great service to Yemen, and it will be a huge boost to when we get back together again early next year. So the process at the moment remains detailed negotiation of detailed issues so that the agreements that we will hope to publish, and we will publish all of them, we will come clean on this before I leave here, will be very concrete, tangible things, agreements which are in writing on specifics which mean things to the people of Yemen and which require concession, compromise, honesty of purpose from the two parties. Finally, as you know, I am hugely helped by two groups of advisors, one of independent Yemeni experts on governance, politics, and another group of Yemeni women, 6 who are here. We had 8 in Geneva, who are little scouts for us, keep us focused, keep us honest, keep us understanding the dynamic. The dynamic in a context like this, we have days and days and days of negotiation, changes all the time. What I think we're seeing is an increase in confidence. People are mixing, people are mingling. We've had some extraordinary stories, which I will not leak, about the things that people are saying to each other, people who come from the same place in Yemen, who haven't seen each other, of course, because they're on different sides of the war. This is an opportunity which is rare. As I say, it's been 2.5 years, and that time is now finished, and I hope we're on the beginning of a new journey. Thank you. Take questions, of course.
Please, Swedish National TV. Mr. Griffiths, we're still discussing after 5 days. What would you describe as the biggest progress so far?
I'd like to say, and there were some reports that no breakthrough on day 2. Have you ever covered talks like this with people who haven't been together for 2.5 years and you expect a breakthrough on day 2? This isn't the way it works. These are detailed discussions, and they're difficult ones. They're difficult. What we've been doing is narrowing the difference between the two sides on issues. So, for example, let me take a real example. The issue of the airport, opening Sana'a Airport. And as you know, the governor of Yemen came forward with a proposal at the beginning to open the airport to domestic travel. And as you know, the Ansarallah leader said, no, they needed international travel. They weren't on the same page. So we've been trying to narrow that to some process which will meet both objectives. I think Hodeidah is a very difficult issue. It's a flashpoint. I've described it as a center of gravity of this war. And it's one where the threat of battle, of campaign to take the port and city has been present for the last months, and where we in the UN, the humanitarian side of the UN, has always been active in the Security Council to try and prevent that. It's now come to the point here where we either can or can't, and I hope within the next day or so we'll be able to tell you exactly what we hope to do about that.
So we are actually entertaining questions over here. If translation from Arabic into English is needed, I'll be doing it over here. So.
Hi, Mr. Martin. This is Badr Qahtani, الشرق الأوسط. سيد مارتن، أنا لا أعرف كيف استطعت أن تنقل عدوى التفاؤل بين الطرفين. رأينا خلال اليومين الماضيين تفاؤل من كلا الطرفين، لكن سؤالي هنا هل المشاورات تنعقد على بحث ضمانات لأن يقوم الحوثيون بالالتزام بكل ما يتم الاتفاق عليه على الأرض، لأنهم نقضوا أكثر من 17 اتفاق سابق، فهل هذه الأمور خصوصا ضمانات مطروحة خلال المشاورات أم لا؟
So there has been a general atmosphere of optimism spread by you and having an impact on the two parties. But the question is, are there guarantees that this optimism is going to be transformed into actual commitments, especially in light of precedences of the Houthi party not abiding by 17 previous agreements?
I'm not making any guarantees. Let's be very clear. And it's not for me, actually, to make guarantees. It's for the parties to give guarantees. I'm here simply to give them the opportunity to talk to each other and to come to agreements. I very strongly am a skeptic of those who are skeptical of the promises of others. If we don't begin to believe in the good faith of those across the table, then we won't achieve peace. That is an essential part of the resolution of any conflict, whether in Yemen, whether in Ireland, as affected my own country, in all the conflicts I've been involved in. But it's trust. In the American idiom is trust but verify. So in every case that we're discussing, it's very important to me, to the international community, to the Security Council, to which we will be briefing right after these talks have ended, that the elements of any agreement are public and the elements of any disagreement are public, so that the people of Yemen, really, more than the people elsewhere, can know what has been promised and can observe with the rest of us whether those promises are being delivered on. The best guarantee is the goodwill of each side to make their promises work. But a second guarantee is the goodwill of the public and the good attention of the public to focus on their performance. The United Nations helps in both. And all I can say about the optimism, Badr, that you referred to, is that bringing people together for the first time in 2 years since they sat down together, already having made an agreement on a humanitarian issue, the release of prisoners, I think Yemen should be proud of the people sitting around that table today rather than deriding them. It's really important that we give respect to each of those parties. They're not equal, no parties ever are. They both have a part to play in bringing peace back to Yemen. Thank you.
أصل سارية من غرفة أخبار مشاورة السلام. لدي سؤال متعلق بمطار صنعاء. هل وصلكم أي رد فعل من جانب أنصار الله حول المبادرة اللي طرحتها الحكومة، وما رأيكم أنتم فيها؟ يعني وبمعنى آخر، متى ستهبط أول طائرة في مطار صنعاء؟
Asil Saria from the Yemeni newsroom. Are there any specifics of a set date for the opening of the Sana'a airport, and when do we expect to see the first airplane actually taking off or landing from or in the airport in Sana'a?
Well, as soon as we have an agreement, I'll let you know. But I can't tell you before we have an agreement, because it's up to the two parties to make that decision. But before we leave, this is a promise. Before we leave, we will be as open with you as possible about what we have achieved here, and that will include answers to your question, because I think all of us, everybody up there, and certainly I think most of us in this room, want that airport opened for the freedom of movement, which is a right of the people of Yemen, even in conflict. So as soon as possible, I hope we can answer your question. As soon as possible, I hope we'll see airplanes flying in and out of that airport where I was just a few days ago. Thank you.
You said that there is progress in the detainees case, and it's a good thing, and we thank you, for this thing. But we still have many things like the truce in Taiz, Sana'a airports. And earlier, United Nations officials said that they are going to name those who make obstacles in the way.
Make what?
Obstacles.
Obstacles,
yes. In the way of consultations.
Well, I'm in the business at the moment of trying to name people who make agreements rather than obstacles. Let's start with that. Let's start with building confidence rather than judging difference. As you know, and I know you know this, I take as an axiom of the sort of job that a mediator does is that my job is to find agreements rather than judge differences. I'm hopeful that we will go past all obstacles. I'm hopeful that we will achieve some progress on all of these issues. But you remember when we started this consultation last Thursday, none of us knew, I certainly didn't know, whether we would make progress on any of the issues. To make progress on all of them is very ambitious indeed. And it's got to be tangible and verifiable, and it's got to be, we need to leave here with a plan as to how we implement each agreement that I still hope, but we're not there yet, that we come to.
Since we're talking about Sana'a Airport, there were differences in opinions between both sides of the delegations. One said that they wanted the Sana'a Airport to be an internal airport and the international airport would be added, while the Ansarullah delegation said that the international airports would be in Sana'a. How are you trying to fix this problem between both sides? And another question, you said in your first press conference that you were ambitious but you're not extremely optimistic. Are you still so after like 4 or 5 days of these negotiations?
Yeah, the difference now is I'm tired, you know. No, it's great food, and you know we're enjoying ourselves up there. The business of being optimistic is something that's dogged me in this position, as you probably know. I've said in the past that hope is the currency of the mediator, because if you don't provide a sense of optimism and hope for the parties, if you're critical and skeptical and derogatory, you will not encourage people to go the extra mile. So I'm still ambitious. I'm certainly ambitious, I think, as I was just saying in answer to the previous question, the notion of making some progress on each of the issues that we'll be discussing is a phenomenon. If we can make the kind of breakthroughs I hope we can, and we'll see in a couple of days, then yes, I'll be very ambitious and very optimistic. The airport is a classic case. The issue of getting some progress on the airport is a classic case of negotiation. It's not just in conflict, it's any contract. It's, you know, when you have two parties with different positions, our job as a neutral party is to find common ground and maybe work on the basis of starting with one position and moving to another. So we suggest options that we hope will meet the aspirations of both and can be actually managed, and with the help of the United Nations. It may be that perhaps with the help of the UN in some role in the management of air travel in Yemen, that we'll be able to bridge the gap between those two parties. I sure hope so, because you know the United Nations flies in and out of Sana'a, as you know, but precious few other people do, and there are so many people in Yemen who are the victims of this conflict. And I know the government of Yemen feels this very strongly, as do, of course, the authorities, the Ansarullah in Sana'a. But, you know, allowing these people to move in the United Nations, you know, we hold this as a very dear value. Did I say it was a top priority, prisoners' release? You know, what I said, I think, the other day was that when I first met President Hadi, he said to me, make the release of prisoners your first priority, because he's an ex-military man. He understands the issue, the humanitarian issue for the families who need their people back. And I heard that from the leadership in Sana'a.
نضال حمادة البناء وجريدة الانتقاد، هل تعتبرون السعودية تضغط في الحرب بما أنها سهلت لكم حضور الوفد اليمني خارج اليمن من صنعاء؟
So unfortunately, if anybody wants to ask me, you need them to line up here. So
yeah, can I just actually finish answering this question first? Yeah. But I think it's an issue on which there has been some progress, and that's what I think I mentioned about it, which is why it's great to see the two sides sitting down and moving on. I'm not wanting to decide about which of the other issues could be a priority. They all are, because they all mean certain things to certain people in Yemen. But you know, finding places where you can reduce the fighting has got to be the kind of thing that we all want to see. Sorry, I'm not looking at you, right? Yeah, sorry.
مصطفى ناصر from Taiz from Yemen Peace Consultation Newsroom. سؤالي طرح أحد الأطراف اليوم أنه في الملف الاقتصادي لم يحدث تقدم حتى الآن. ما هي يعني لماذا لم يحدث نقاشات حول الملف الاقتصادي وتقدم في هذا الجانب؟ شكرا.
one of the two parties mentioned that there has been no progress on the economic file. So why is it that there has been no discussion addressing the economic situation?
Well, that's just not true. There has been quite a lot of discussion on the economic file. As I say, including that file and the others have yet to come to a successful conclusion. But there actually has been some very detailed discussion on the issues of the Central Bank of Yemen, enabling the Central Bank of Yemen to serve the people throughout Yemen, to enable revenues to be collected in a transparent way into the central bank and then used as a basis for the payment of salaries. There have been quite a lot of discussions about this, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to announce something on that when we finish these consultations. Yeah, you have to go over there. Right?
Sir, from Al Arabian News Channel.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you, sir, you said that Taiz and Hodeidah still the major question or issues. Could you elaborate a little bit on the sticking points in Hodeidah, for example, if it is possible? More generally, which is easier question.
Yeah, good.
Could you now tell us what is your roadmap after these round of consultation?
Okay, I think. Let me try and dodge the first question, because I don't want to presume where the parties are going to go on either Taiz or Hodeidah. But I don't think it's any secret that it's easier to make progress on Taiz than it is on Hodeidah. But right this evening, we'll be having a series of meetings with each side on both, and including tomorrow morning. And we have the support of many diplomats from many countries. We had the G19, the group of ambassadors who you met the other day, who came with us, who were here today to help us on these and other issues. The roadmap is a very good question. What I hope what I certainly plan to produce, that's interesting. What I plan to produce before we leave here is a plan for implementation of the issues that we are discussing here. Both sides have said to me very clearly, please let's be clear what we are agreeing to and what's going to happen about what we have agreed to, so we don't have to go over it again. So I think that's really important, so that there will be a plan which will be again public to see what we're supposed to do tomorrow, the next day, next week, and in the coming weeks. And then I hope, but we'll have to get the agreement to the parties, that we'll reconvene consultations again early next year somewhere at some date, where we should begin to address the issues, political security issues, to resolve this conflict. Thank you. Is this the right thing?
أمل اليريسي من غرفة مشاورة السلام. اليوم هو اليوم الخامس لمشاورة السلام. هل تتوقعون بعد الانتهاء من هذه المشاورات أن تصلون إلى مسودة نهائية وإطار عام تمهد لجولة ثانية من المشاورات؟
Yes.
Is there a draft already put together for the political framework agreement?
We have drafts of pretty well all the issues that we've been discussing here, and the parties also have drafts, and some of them have become public in error, and we keep redrafting. So some of the documents that you may have seen publicly are no longer the ones that we're working to. But as in any of these negotiations, in any such situation, we're working, no agreement will be reached if you don't have something down on a piece of paper that you go through in some detail. So yes, we do have drafts, and we are discussing those in detail with the parties.
Mr. Griffiths, Nabil Abisab, Al-Hurra TV station. Of course, you've seen two papers leaked today, one on Taz, one on Hodeida. And maybe you've heard of them. They are very detailed, and obviously they're written by a very well expert, like a mediator, maybe like you or someone else. So can you comment on the plan on Hodeida, and have you started discussing it with both parties? Have you heard any like or some serious reactions on it? Thank you.
I'm very glad to confirm I haven't written any of these myself, so that's the good news. As I say, a lot of these papers are written by the parties, and you will find that, of course, in any negotiation of this sort. We also provide comments, redrafts, and so forth. I think we're up to about, I don't know what number, but the draft that was unfortunately leaked on Hodeida is not the one we're working on at the moment. We're working on something a lot simpler than that. And I'm sure that by tomorrow there'll be a further draft. It's the nature of this kind of business, as you know. So don't worry about being distracted by those of the things that you've seen. But clearly, what we're trying to do in Hodeida and Tais is reduce the level of fighting, increase humanitarian access, provide for the movement of people. Help the process of demining and increase the humanitarian assistance. So we know, I think, quite well the aims and objectives of these agreements. But the details of that are in deep discussion, even this evening, with the parties.
بعد مرور 5 أيام من المباحثات يبدو أن أغلب الملفات ما تزال تراوح مكانها. في اعتقادك ما هو الملف الذي يمكن أن يشهد بوادر للحل ويمكن أن يستبشر من خلاله الشعب اليمني بأن هناك حلول يمكن أن تكون في الطريق من خلال هذه المباحثات؟
After 5 years of consultations, it doesn't. 5 days of consultations. 5 days of consultations. There doesn't seem to be enough progress made on any of the issues. So, what would you consider as the file that is going to witness progress and will bring good news to the young people?
Can you tell me why you think there's not been enough progress? No, okay, sorry, I'll tell you. Let me answer that question properly rather than flippantly, because it's a fair question. We've got quite a few different issues that we're negotiating between the parties, and it's clear to me, and it's again common practice in such circumstances, that only when you see an overall view, when the parties see an overall package of the issues, will they be able to take some decisions on where they want to make concessions or gain advantages or compromises. So I think it's not surprisingly the principle that's being observed here is that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. And that's why I think you may, I hope, wrongly believe that there's been no progress. There's been a lot of progress, but we haven't crossed the finishing line yet on these issues, and that's what I hope when we next meet that we will be able to speak to.
لبنان، سؤالي هو السعودية تقول أنها تقود تحالف في الحرب اليمنية، هل تعتبرونها ضغط في هذه الحرب؟
Saudi Arabia says that it leads a coalition in this war. Do you think it is a party to this process?
To this process of consultation here.
Do you think it's a party in this war?
Frankly, it's not my mandate, job, or requirement to comment. My job is to provide an opportunity for those two Yemeni parties who are present here to resolve their differences and restore peace to Yemen. I think, as I said the other day, the fact that there are other member states who are interested in the stability of Yemen is no surprise. I include member states in Europe. The stability of Yemen is important to them too, to us too. I speak as a European. And it's obviously important to people in the Gulf. So that's no surprise. But the solution to Yemen will come from the decisions of Yemenis. Thank you.
Yeah, Walid al-Mufti, how can you expect the achievement from the agreement from the government had if Saudi Arabia, they are the one who decide for any decision of this situation in Yemen?
I'm sorry, again, I'll disagree with that. And I have a great deal of experience of President Hadi making many decisions about the future of Yemen, and I don't think he consults others all the time on that. There's no secret about the fact that his government has support of the Saudi-led coalition, but the decisions that are taken by the parties here today and tomorrow and next time, frankly, I can tell you, these are decisions they're taking, nobody else is taking. I think that's right. I think that's how it should be. Thank you. Thank you very much. This was very, very kind of you to come. I'm looking forward to seeing you much sooner than last time, hopefully within the next 2 or 3 days, and then let's hope we have some real news for you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much indeed.